Nobody saw this coming as an undrafted rookie has been showing out at the Pittsburgh Steelers minicamp. My name is Peyton Kleppe, and on today's episode of Steelers Digest, we'll be breaking down the latest Pittsburgh Steelers rumors and analysis regarding the Pittsburgh Steelers football team. As the Pittsburgh Steelers have struggled on the offensive side of the ball, this undrafted rookie free agent could be the answer to the Pittsburgh Steelers offensive line problems. Before we get into the latest reports, if you guys are not already currently subscribed to the channel, just click that subscribe button down below. Only 9% of our current viewers are actually currently subscribed. So if you click that subscribe button, we will get you guys the latest Pittsburgh Steelers news every single day. Let's get right into it. We got some exciting news on the offensive side of the football. So let's just get right into it. So the Pittsburgh Steelers have added offensive lineman Thomas Perry to their roster this offseason. This is a guy that, he definitely had a long road to the NFL. Started off in D3 school and moved his way up to LSU. Obviously, the Pittsburgh Steelers have struggled on the offensive side of the ball, specifically on that offensive line. The Pittsburgh Steelers have prioritized their offensive line in recent off seasons, but they did not select an offensive lineman in this year's draft. Instead, they're hoping for improvement from a group of young interior linemen such as Zach Frazier, Mason McCormick, Spencer Anderson. Perry could find a spot as a depth piece behind those players. The Pittsburgh Steelers have prided themselves in the past in having a good offensive line to run that football behind, but obviously in recent years, we have not been so strong up front. But obviously, last year we did select Troy Fontanu with our first round selection, and hopefully he's going to step up in his second year, obviously coming off knee injury in that rookie season, but pair him alongside a growing Broderick Jones, and we could have a pretty solid offensive line if those guys both grow into the players that we do expect them to become. And obviously guys like Zach Frazier have become potential Pro Bowlers in their rookie year. Mason McCormick as well, he came out of a small college and he ended up playing some good football for us down the stretch, with some injuries to Isaac Seumalo and, some other guys on that offensive line. The offensive line is also a position where guys are going to get hurt. It's a tough position, and it's a position that a lot of people do not talk about. They kind of overlook it, but it's very important. You look at teams like Philadelphia Eagles who have built their offensive line and defensive line, and obviously they're the best team in the NFL right now. They can dominate up front on both sides of the football, and that's where it starts. You need a good offensive line, a big offensive line to have success in today's modern NFL. If you look back a few years ago with the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, when they didn't have an offensive line, obviously they were getting a ton of pressure and they couldn't have any success. The Buccaneers were all over Patrick Mahomes the whole game, and they ended up losing by a ton. And the same thing happened in this year's Super Bowl, where the Eagles just kept sending that pressure, and Mahomes just couldn't get rid of the ball, and it's unfortunate, but it's the truth. So the Pittsburgh Steelers have added this guy to try to help bolster that offensive line. Some of these undrafted guys ended up being better players than some of the guys get picked in the first round. Look at the Giants the past couple of years. They've got guys like Eric Flowers, Evan Neal, high pedigree guys. And, sometimes when you bring those kind of guys into the NFL, they really don't have a lot of success because they're so used to just being the biggest guy on the field, the most athletic guy on the field, that, they kind of lose that edge competitively. But, just despite 3 weeks of experience at center, Perry held his own against elite competition, proving that his invitation to the game wasn't a mistake. This guy is a 6'2", 317-pound rookie that, he lacks the adequate size for an interior offensive lineman, but he makes up for it in strength. This guy has a 505-pound bench press. That is more than Aaron Donald. In a recent interview a few years ago, actually, it was with our newly acquired receiver, DK Metcalf. It was funny. Aaron Donald did talk about this, and he did say he's got a 500-pound bench press. So this undrafted rookie does also have a 500-pound bench press. And, I'm really rooting for this guy. Perry could be a helpful player in, the Pittsburgh Steelers offense, And, coming out of a small college, this guy's got a chip on his shoulder, and I bet he really wants to make the Pittsburgh Steelers. We are a team that definitely is missing some pieces on that offensive line, so it could be a great opportunity for this guy to show that, he's been counted out his whole career, and he could step up for the Pittsburgh Steelers when we need him. We look in the past, some other notable undrafted guys that we have picked up is James Harrison. He was a guy that was undrafted, and he came into the Pittsburgh Steelers as a depth piece, just trying to make a job, trying to make some money. And obviously, he developed into a Hall of Fame career player. James Harrison is a notorious football player. I got that 92 jersey behind me somewhere. And he's become one of our fan favorites and one of the best players for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I don't want to say that this guy will be like James Harrison, but he does certainly have a chance to make an impact for the Pittsburgh Steelers and show that, he's worth picking up as an undrafted free agent. We've also had guys in the past that have stepped up, like Beanie Bishop. He was a guy that was undrafted last year that Coach Tomlin picked up and made him into a potential starting caliber player for years to come. He did have 3 picks last year and showed that he worked to get his spot on the roster, worked to get that place in the NFL. And, the NFL draft is kind of a messed up process because there's a ton of guys that get picked in those high rounds that end up don't working out. And there's a ton of guys that end up being undrafted or picked later in the draft that, having that chip on their shoulder that they didn't get selected where they wanted just pushes them and motivates them more to want to become one of those star players in the league and play for their football dreams. Another guy that I can think of is Tony Romo. He was a guy that was undrafted for the Dallas Cowboys, and he had a ton of success after a few rocky starts, but he definitely had some success in the NFL. Another guy the Pittsburgh Steelers did pick up as an undrafted free agent, Jaylen Warren, another guy that's going to be a starter for us as an offensive piece on our offense at that running back position. He was a guy that Coach Tomlin also found in the undrafted rookie market. In 2021, when we drafted Najee Harris, he picked up Jaylen Warren, and he's been a guy that's came to work every day, worked hard, and proven who he is and how hard he works. And I think these undrafted guys in the NFL is what we want for the Pittsburgh Steelers, because Coach Tomlin says we want volunteers. We do not want hostages. And we're trying to build that Steelers DNA. We want to build an identity on offense where, other teams won't want to play us. We want to be that team that's going to rust you up, punch you in the mouth a little bit, kick you, stomp you down, and do a little touchdown dance on your head at the end of the game. So, I don't know about that. I don't know if Coach Tomlin's going to like that, and I don't know if we have those receivers really in that wide receiver room anymore. Obviously, trading George Pickens was a huge move for the Pittsburgh Steelers as well, but we did bring in a guy like DK Metcalf, who I do expect to be a leader in that wide receiver room. Obviously, he's proved in the past he really wants to play for the Pittsburgh Steelers and for a head coach like Mike Tomlin. So I think just adding these undrafted guys to our roster is just going to help build that competitive edge, build that motivation in our whole locker room to just want to win and want to work hard every day and put the team above yourself and not that individual ego. That is all I have for you guys tonight on Steelers Digest. If you guys are not already currently subscribed, click that subscribe button down below. Thank you so much. Here we go, Steelers. Peace out, boys.